وهو الذي جعلكم خلائف الأرض ورفع بعضكم فوق بعض درجات ليبلوكم فيما آتاكم إن ربك سريع العقاب وإنه لغفور رحيم.
And visited over 125 countries in the community, I feel that one of the biggest problems and one of the biggest sources of conflict and confusion within the Muslim community actually comes from students of knowledge that act immaturely or that say things that they're really not qualified to be saying. So this matter needs to be addressed. That's one of the reasons it's very, very important. The second reason it's very important is that we don't want to be of those who think that they represent the deen of Allah and actually don't. And we speak on behalf of this religion in a manner that is not becoming of the religion, and we might end up falling under a certain category of people. Just to give you some perspective on that, I want to share with you something that Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah used to say. Some of his students would come to him and trying to learn hadith. And he would ask them, how much Arabic have you studied? And they would say, we already know Arabic, we want to learn hadith. So he would say, إِنَّمَا أَخْشَى عَلَيَّ طَالِبَ الْعِلْمِ الَّذِي لَمْ يَتَعَلَّمِ النَّحْوَ. So the thing that scares me the most is the student of knowledge that hasn't studied syntax, Arabic properly, and wants to learn hadith. And يَدْخُلَ فِي قَوْلِهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ مَنْ كَذِبَ عَلَيَّ مُتَعَمِّدًا. That he may fall into the words of the Prophet ﷺ when the Prophet ﷺ warned very strongly, whoever lies against me on purpose has guaranteed himself a place in the hellfire. These people are coming to learn from him, and he's saying that it scares me that they want to learn from me, because they might end up saying something on behalf of the hadith that doesn't represent, in its true form, the teaching or the message of that hadith. Now I actually want to get to the heart of the matter. The first problem I want to share with you, I'd like to title it Intellectual Humility. Intellectual humility. In other words, when you learn something from a teacher in matters of deen, you are not necessarily qualified to go and teach it now. Just because you learned it, that does not mean that your job is now to, or that you should even do so. First of all, you're not obligated to. Second of all, in most cases, you probably even shouldn't. Why are you learning religion? Why are you learning anything about the deen? First and foremost, for who? Yourself. First and foremost for yourself. And second of all for who? Your family. If you haven't applied what you're learning on yourself, and you haven't actually taken the time out to communicate it to your family, you probably shouldn't be concerned with anything else. That's the first thing. The second thing is, there are certain areas of this deen, actually most areas of this deen, that deal with law, legal issues, deriving a ruling from a certain ayah or a certain hadith and things like that. These are scholarly matters. And in scholarly matters, you can have really heavy-hitting, high-level scholars that studied the issue for decades, still having differences among each other. After their years of research and sitting at the feet of other scholars for their entire life, at the end of that journey, they say, Allahu A'lam. They say that. And then you have us, who listen to a 20-minute lecture, and now based on whatever we studied, we know, actually the stronger opinion is this. And the weaker opinion is that. And really, the right opinion is this one. And let me tell you what the haqq of the matter is. In other words, we speak in very absolute terms about things in regards to which people that have far more knowledge than we do were not very sure when they spoke about them. And they were very scared to talk about them. And they were very reluctant to talk about them. But yet, fatwa come out of our mouths as we're chewing on a sandwich in a conversation at a restaurant. Oh yeah, that's haram, yeah. Oh, that's totally halal. Oh, that's this, or that's that, or that's the other. Oh, those guys, they're off, they're wrong. We say these things very, very casually. You know what that illustrates? It illustrates two things. The person who speaks in such absolute terms, one thing this illustrates is ignorance. They don't really have enough knowledge to know that there's something more out there. They don't know the limits of their own knowledge. That's the first thing. And even if they do, perhaps it illustrates that they lack humility in terms of knowledge. That there is more knowledge out there. Or even if you've studied the matter, you read a book on it, you attended all the courses on it, your notes are more organized than anybody else's notes on this topic. If it's a legal matter, especially if it's a legal matter, we are, as students of knowledge, we're not in a position to open our mouth about it. Leave this matter to those who are the ahl of it, who are qualified to talk about certain things. And when we don't do that, most of the fitan of the community come at the hands of youth that have half-baked knowledge and turn them into debates that are going to, tear the community apart or tear the ummah apart or tear people apart from each other, calling each other deviant or misguided or, sellouts to the religion and all kinds of things. All based on half-baked religion, all based on half-baked learning, not mature learning, not applying proper humility when it comes to such knowledge. This is the first problem I want to share with you. Knowledge is a quest. The more you learn, it shouldn't make you more arrogant. The more you learn, it should make you more humble. That's the point. It's the point of knowledge. Now, this is particularly difficult in our time because we're living in a culture and we're living in a time where the increase of knowledge necessarily leads to the increase of ego. These two things, in the culture in which we live, they go hand in hand. For example, when somebody finishes a bachelor's, they think of themselves higher as someone who has a high school diploma. When somebody gets a master's degree, they think of themselves higher. When they get a PhD, they think of themselves even higher. When they become a doctor or professor or whatever, they don't just say their name. What do they say next to their name? They say doctor or professor. Because, they want to show the people that they are at this intellectual higher level that the other is not. It's even subconscious. So we associate getting higher up with increase in knowledge. On the other hand, you find in the Quran, when the people, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ in Surah Al-Isra, studied at the end of Surah Al-Isra. It's really beautiful. No doubt those who've been given knowledge, whenever the Quran is read on them, they fall on their faces in sajda. And what is that an act of? Arrogance or humility? It's humility. I met this brother, took Shahada about 2 months ago, and he just came to his friends Muslims, he came to the masjid, and they're all making salah, and he said, just follow along what we're doing. He wanted to join the prayer, right? So he got into sajda, they finished the whole jama'ah, he didn't get out of sajda. He stayed in sajda. And he's like 10, 15 minutes, and people are like, did he pass out? What happened? What's going on? And he gets up crying, and he goes, I've never put my face on the ground before. It's an amazing feeling. I've never been that humble before God before, ever. Right? So the fact that the person of knowledge, they come into contact with knowledge, and what does Allah describe them doing? Engaged in the most humble act, right? Falling on their faces in sajda. This is the essential purpose of knowledge, is to make you closer to Allah. What happens for a lot of people? Knowledge becomes a means by which they establish their superiority over others in debate. It becomes a means by which they can show that I know more than you, I have more evidences than you have, I can tell you which hadith it came from, in which book, I can tell you which scholar said what, and therefore my opinion overrides yours. You don't know what you're talking about. This attitude is also described in the Quran. Allah Azza wa Jalla talks about the people who have knowledge and says, وَمَا تَفَرَّقُوا إِلَّا مِن بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَتْهُمُ الْبَيِّنَاتِ. In another place, إِلَّا مِن بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَهُمُ الْعِلْمُ بَغْيًا بَيْنَهُم. They didn't disagree until after knowledge came, in a show of arrogance against each other, and an urge to rebel against each other, and dominate each other. What were they using as a weapon of domination? Knowledge. They were using knowledge as a weapon to dominate. Where knowledge is supposed to be a means by which you attain humility. So the exact opposite was happening, subhanAllah. So this is the first serious warning I have for students of knowledge. Know the limits of your intellect. When it comes to matters of halal and haram, refer it to scholars. If you learned it from a scholar, if you took a course from a scholar, you say, you know what, I don't want to tell you anything, why don't you ask my teacher? Why don't you ask him? We have to become a culture of referring things back to the people who have more knowledge than we do. And if there is someone who's more knowledgeable than you are, then you refer matters back to them. Instead of, even if you think you're qualified, know for a fact you're not qualified. You're not qualified to talk about meat issues. You're not qualified to talk about financing. You're not qualified. You're not qualified. You're not qualified to talk about the length of the beard. You're not qualified to talk about these things. You're not. Even if you studied them. Even if you read articles about them. You are not qualified. There are people that have spent a lot more time than you have, and can speak about this with a lot more authority than you can, that are actually qualified to speak about it, and they should be given these questions, and they should be given, and by the way, even what did I say about those people? A lot of times when you go to them, what do? I don't know. Allahu Alam. That's a difficult question. I'll get back to you. They'll avoid it. They'll avoid it. Imagine they're showing humility. They're scared of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They might say something that's incorrect. And yet here we are it's just coming freely out of our mouth.